Historical figures. 1. David Bowie. David Bowie was an English singer, songwriter, and actor who is often considered to be one of the most famous musicians of the 20th century. He was a leading figure in popular music and was loved by fans and other musicians, especially for his work during the 1970s. In his life, he sold 140 million albums worldwide, and he is one of the world's best-selling music artists. Some of his most famous songs are Space Oddity and Ziggy Stardust. He is also well known for acting and starred in many movies, including the Japanese movie Senjo no Merry Christmas and as a Goblin King in Labyrinth. He was added to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996. Historical figures. 2. Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a South African politician and activist. On April 27th, 1994, he was made the first president of South Africa, elected in a fully represented democratic election. Mandela was also the first black president of his country. His government focused on ending racism, poverty, inequality, and on improving racial understanding in South Africa. Mandela received more than 250 honors, including the 1993 Nobel Peace Prize, the US Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Soviet Order of Lenin. He is often referred to by his clan name, Madiba, or as Tata, father. Mandela was described as a hero, and his actions gave thousands of people hope. Historical figures. 3. George Washington. George Washington was the first president of the United States from 1789 to 1797. Washington lived in America when it was still ruled by the King of England. In 1775, Washington and many other landowners became upset with unfair treatment by British rulers. They began to argue and fight for their rights. When the British refused, they decided to go to war. Washington became a general, but he did not have an easy job. He managed to hold the army together, even during hard times and losing battles. After 6 years, George led the army to victory over the British. After the war, he helped create America and became its first president. Historical figures. 4. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a German-born theoretical physicist who developed the general theory of relativity, one of the two pillars of modern physics. He received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. Einstein is well known for his theories about light, matter, gravity, space, and time. His most well-known equation is E equals mc squared. It means that energy and mass are different forms of the same thing. Near the beginning of World War II, he warned President Franklin D. Roosevelt that Germany might be developing an atomic weapon. He recommended that the US begin nuclear weapons research. Because of this, the US became the first and only country to have nuclear weapons during the war. Historical figures. 5. Steve Jobs. Stephen Paul Steve Jobs was an American businessman, investor, co-founder, and CEO of Apple Inc. He was also the boss of Pixar Animation Studios until it was bought by Disney. He was seen as a leading figure in both the computer and entertainment industries. He was a Silicon Valley businessman, most famous for his work with the company Apple. Together with Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, Jobs helped make the idea of the personal computer popular in the late 1970s. At Apple, in the early 1980s, Jobs was one of the first to think of using a mouse to control the computer. Jobs presented the iPhone on January 9th, 2007. On August 24th, 2011, Jobs retired as CEO of Apple.